we have a new, never-before-seen video recorded behind the scenes during the invasion of Iraq 20 years ago.
They thought it was just another legend, a story carved in clay, whispered by time itself. But deep beneath the shifting sands of Iraq, archaeologists discovered something that defied every rule of history. What began as a simple radar scan in the ruins of ancient Uruk soon turned into one of the most chilling mysteries of the modern age. The data was clear: a colossal underground structure perfectly aligned with ancient descriptions of a king's eternal resting place. The tomb of Gilgamesh, the demigod ruler, the first hero written in human history. For centuries his story was dismissed as myth, a poetic dream of immortality. But what if it wasn't just a story? What if the epic was a warning? When scientists realized what they might have found, everything changed. The site was sealed, reports vanished, and those who spoke of it stopped. Some called it superstition. Others said it was fear. But one truth remained: no one dared to open what the desert had kept buried for 5,000 years. What they found, and what they refused to touch, could rewrite the story of mankind itself. Before we uncover the forbidden secret of the tomb of Gilgamesh, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell icon, and join us as we journey into the sands where myth and history collide. Long before the pyramids pierced the Egyptian sky or Rome's stones were laid, there was Uruk, a gleaming city of temples and towers rising from the Mesopotamian plain. This was the land where stories began, where gods and men shared the same dust. At its heart ruled a king unlike any other, Gilgamesh, the man 2/3 divine and 1/3 mortal. His name was spoken in reverence and fear, a symbol of human power and divine will. Gilgamesh's tale was first etched onto clay tablets more than 4,000 years ago. The Epic of Gilgamesh, the oldest surviving story ever written. In its verses, he conquers beasts, defies the gods, and ventures into the underworld in search of eternal life. Yet, behind the poetry lies something more: fragments of truth, hints that Gilgamesh was not merely a myth, but a real ruler who once walked the streets of Uruk. Ancient chronicles from the Sumerians describe his reign as a time of monumental building and divine communion. Temples such as Iana and the walls of Uruk, so vast that even later kings marveled at them, were said to be his creation. When his reign ended, the texts say, his people performed a burial unlike any other. They diverted the Euphrates River, lowering the mighty current to dig a tomb in its dry bed. There, they laid their king to rest in a stone chamber filled with treasures, offerings, and the symbols of divine kingship. Once sealed, the waters were returned, hiding the tomb forever beneath the flow of the river. For centuries, this tale blurred the line between legend and history. Scholars debated whether Gilgamesh was a mythic construct, a moral fable carved in clay, or a forgotten monarch whose name had become godlike through time. Early archaeologists scoured the ruins of Uruk and nearby cities, uncovering tablets, temples, and foundations that whispered fragments of his story. But the tomb itself remained a mystery, described vividly in ancient cuneiform, but never found. Then came the age of machines, a time when archaeology met technology. Satellites began scanning ancient landscapes from above. Radar pierced the earth below. What once required shovels and decades could now be revealed in minutes. It was this convergence of myth and modern science that drew the attention of a group of archaeologists who believed the old Sumerian texts weren't metaphorical at all. They were maps. One of these scientists, Dr. Jörg Fassbinder of the Bavarian Department of Historical Monuments, was among the first to suspect that Gilgamesh's resting place might still lie buried beneath the sands near the old course of the Euphrates. His team began surveying the area with ground-penetrating radar, searching for geometric patterns no human eye had seen for 5,000 years. What they found astonished them. Outlines of walls, courtyards, and a possible central chamber, structures eerily similar to those described in the ancient epics. Could this be the long-lost tomb of the king who defied mortality? The evidence suggested that the legend may have been grounded in truth. Beneath the shifting sands of Iraq, where rivers once flowed and civilizations were born, something monumental lay hidden, something that had waited millennia for rediscovery. The myth of Gilgamesh, the demigod who sought eternal life, was no longer confined to clay tablets. It had become a living mystery once more, shimmering just beneath the surface of history. The deserts of southern Iraq hold stories older than any written word, but for centuries, much of that past was hidden beneath layers of sand and silence. By the dawn of the 21st century, archaeologists had mapped much of ancient Mesopotamia, yet one question still haunted. In 2003, an archaeological team from Germany, led by Dr. Jörg Fassbinder of the Bavarian Department of Historical Monuments, arrived near the ruins of Uruk, one of the oldest cities on Earth. Their tools were not shovels and picks, but ground-penetrating radar and magnetometers, instruments capable of peering beneath the surface without disturbing it. The goal was modest: to map the ancient city's layout and better understand how the Euphrates once flowed through it. What they uncovered was far more than anyone expected. As the radar swept across the landscape, the screens began to reveal patterns that no natural formation could create: rectangular enclosures, straight corridors, and what appeared to be a large central chamber buried deep below. The dimensions and alignment of the structures mirrored the ancient Sumerian descriptions of Gilgamesh's burial site. A great house beneath the waters. To the astonishment of the team, the buried complex lay precisely where ancient texts suggested, along the old course of the Euphrates River, a place where water once ran directly over what could be a monumental tomb. Fassbinder's team recorded their findings carefully, combining radar data with satellite imagery and ancient maps. The evidence hinted at a subterranean complex, possibly dating back over 4,000 years. The idea that the final resting place of Gilgamesh might truly exist was no longer confined to myth. It had taken form in measurable coordinates and digital scans. But then, just as excitement began to spread, history itself intervened. Within weeks of the team's discovery, the Iraq War erupted, engulfing the region in conflict. Archaeological work halted overnight. Foreign teams were evacuated. Equipment was left behind, and access to the site was cut off indefinitely. Many of the original records were archived, but never fully released to the public. The findings, which might have rewritten early human history, became the subject of quiet discussions and fragmentary reports. In the months that followed, fragments of Fassbinder's interviews surfaced. He spoke cautiously but with unmistakable wonder, describing how the buried layout of Uruk corresponded to an ancient river system and possible royal structures beneath it. To him, the data confirmed that the mythological burial of Gilgamesh, once dismissed as symbolic, was rooted in geographical reality. Yet, without further excavation, no one could know for certain what lay below. After the war, when archaeologists returned to assess the damage, many found the region altered by flooding, looting, and shifting sands. Still, the radar scans remained, silent images of walls and chambers beneath a now quiet plain. Some researchers believe the site holds not just Gilgamesh's tomb, but also one of Mesopotamia's best preserved ancient riverbeds, possibly containing artifacts untouched for millennia. For the scientific community, it was both a triumph and a heartbreak, proof that ancient texts could guide modern discovery, but also a reminder of how fragile such work can be in times of unrest. The discovery at Uruk stands as one of archaeology's great unresolved mysteries, a moment when legend and technology brushed against each other, revealing just enough to change the story of human history forever, yet leaving the truth buried beneath the sands once more. When the first reports of the discovery near Uruk began to circulate, they carried both excitement and unease. On paper, it was a triumph, the possible location of Gilgamesh's tomb, the burial place of the world's first hero king. But on the ground, among the ruins and riverbeds, something about the site felt different. The local guides who had worked for years alongside foreign researchers began refusing to approach certain areas. They spoke of a presence that grew stronger the deeper the team ventured into the sands, not a visible force, but a heavy, quiet energy, as if the earth itself was warning them to stay away. At first, the archaeologists dismissed these reactions as superstition, yet one by one, odd incidents began to occur. Radar units malfunctioned, readings vanished mid-scan, and batteries drained faster than expected. On several occasions, workers reported feeling tremors, small, rhythmic vibrations that instruments failed to detect. Others fell ill without clear cause, experiencing dizziness or nausea when near the suspected burial zone. To most scientists, these were coincidences, the result of heat, exhaustion, or magnetic interference. But to those who lived nearby, it was the king's protection, a curse written into the soil long before their time. Across Mesopotamia's history, the idea of sacred protection over tombs was not new. Ancient Sumerian texts warned of the sleep of the gods, sealed chambers that no mortal should disturb. Even the Epic of Gilgamesh spoke of divine boundaries between the world of men and the realm of the dead. Scholars later compared these warnings to the Egyptian curses found in tombs like that of Tutankhamun. Protective inscriptions meant not to frighten, but to preserve balance. Yet in Uruk, the fear felt less symbolic and more immediate. Within the archaeological community, quiet divisions began to form. Some argued that further excavation was essential, that the discovery could confirm Gilgamesh as a historical figure, bridging myth and reality. Others hesitated, uneasy about the potential consequences, not from supernatural fear, but from what the findings might reveal. What if the artifacts or remains contradicted known timelines? What if the story humanity had built around its own origins was incomplete or wrong? Meanwhile, official reports about the Uruk site grew scarce. Funding was delayed, communication between departments slowed, and media interest faded into the background noise of ongoing conflict. The deeper question of why the site remained untouched lingered. Was it simply a matter of safety, or had authorities been advised or warned to stop? For the local workers, the answer was clear. The tomb was protected, whether by divine will or by the weight of history itself. In the evenings, they spoke softly about how kings of old were buried with their gods, sealed with incantations to keep intruders away. The Mesopotamian world believed in balance. To disturb the resting place of a king was to unbalance that order. For the scientists, it was less mystical, but no less haunting. To them, the fear lay not in curses, but in the unknown, in realizing that the boundary between legend and fact might be thinner than anyone imagined. The tomb, if it truly existed, held the power to reshape history, theology, and even the story of civilization. In the quiet of the desert, the unease deepened. Instruments stayed packed, notes were archived, expeditions moved on to other sites. What had begun as an archaeological triumph slowly became a silence no one dared to break, a mystery suspended between faith and science, as if Gilgamesh, the man who once sought immortality, still guarded his final secret beneath the sands of Uruk. As conflict spread across Iraq in 2003, ancient cities once guarded by time became entangled in the machinery of modern war. Among them lay the ruins of Uruk, where only months earlier a team of German archaeologists had detected what could be the tomb of King Gilgamesh. When the invasion began, their instruments were abandoned, and the once bustling research camp fell silent. But in the confusion that followed, reports began to emerge that U.S. military units had arrived at the site, not for combat, but for protection. The official statement was simple: to safeguard Iraq's cultural heritage. Yet, for many in the archaeological community, questions arose that have never been answered. Eyewitness accounts from nearby villages spoke of unusual activity around the Uruk excavation zone, perimeter fencing, restricted access, and the arrival of foreign technical teams carrying equipment rarely used in conservation work. The area was declared off-limits, even to local officials. When asked, military spokespeople cited cultural preservation, though no public record of such an operation was ever released. Within months, rumors began circulating that a classified excavation had taken place beneath the cover of a wartime security. At the same time, another event deepened the mystery: the looting of the Iraqi National Museum in Baghdad. Thousands of artifacts vanished, including rare Mesopotamian relics. Among the missing items was the Gilgamesh Dream Tablet, an ancient clay fragment inscribed with a passage from the Epic of Gilgamesh. It resurfaced years later in the United States, traced through private collections before being repatriated to Iraq in 2021. For many, the coincidence was too striking to ignore: the alleged discovery of Gilgamesh's tomb and the disappearance of one of the oldest texts describing him. Inside academic circles, the discussion turned uneasy. Some archaeologists who had worked on the Uruk surveys found their communications suddenly restricted. Requests for further excavation permits were denied without explanation. Digital data from the 2003 scans disappeared from certain archives, leading to speculation that the findings had been classified. A few whispered that what had been found beneath Uruk's sands was considered too sensitive, not for scientific reasons, but for political or cultural ones. Journalists and independent researchers attempted to trace the operation's details, but their paths often ended in silence. A handful of leaked documents mentioned deep ground stabilization work, though no official excavation was ever acknowledged. Theories began to take shape. Some argued that a highly significant archaeological discovery had been made and hidden from the public to prevent. For the archaeologists who had first mapped Uruk, the experience was disheartening. What had begun as a dream to uncover one of humanity's oldest legends had turned into a story clouded by secrecy. Officially, the Uruk site remains under protection, closed to foreign expeditions. Unofficially, many believe that an excavation was conducted under the radar, its results buried under layers of military classification and denial. In the years since, the story of the hidden mission has become part of the Gilgamesh mystery itself, a modern echo of an ancient silence. What truly happened at Uruk remains uncertain. Was it simply a case of wartime confusion, or was something found beneath the sands that could alter how we understand the dawn of civilization? Whatever the truth, it seems that the past was once again sealed away, guarded not by curses or myths, but by modern secrecy and the quiet persistence of unanswered questions. Beneath the restless sands of Uruk, where the Euphrates once flowed, the legend of Gilgamesh seemed to stir again, this time not as myth, but as something tangible. In the years that followed the hidden surveys and the wartime lockdown, fragments of testimony began to surface. A few engineers, translators, and local workers quietly described what they claimed to have seen: a stone chamber, sealed and untouched for millennia, deep below the surface where the radar had first detected the anomaly. Inside that chamber, according to these accounts, The walls were marked with ancient Sumerian inscriptions, faint yet legible, invoking the gods of protection and warning of guardians of the deep. Among the phrases repeated were references to a vessel not to be opened and the king who sleeps beneath the waters. The words echoed the final passages of the Epic of Gilgamesh, in which the hero faces mortality and finds no eternal life, only rest. Those who claimed to have entered the site spoke of an eerie calm, a stillness so complete it seemed to swallow sound. In the center of the chamber lay what appeared to be a stone sarcophagus, carved with symbols of divine kingship and surrounded by objects of extraordinary craftsmanship, jewelry, tools, fragments of lapis lazuli, and vessels sealed with bitumen. The air was dry, preserved by time itself. Within the sarcophagus, some whispered, was a form, a body remarkably intact, its features indistinct, but its scale unusual, larger than any normal man. No photographs were ever released publicly, and no samples were officially catalogued. Whether through caution or command, the archaeologists stopped short of opening or removing the remains. Concerns about contamination, political instability, and ethical responsibility all played a role. Some believed the site should be left undisturbed, a sacred space preserving the dignity of the ancient dead. Others argued that the find could transform human history, proof that the Gilgamesh of legend was no myth but a man, perhaps even the earliest figure remembered in writing. As the years passed, the story blurred into secrecy. Some data was said to have been classified, while others vanished entirely. Those who spoke of the tomb did so carefully, as if describing a dream half-remembered. A few believed the chamber had since been reburied, sealed again by the same forces that once protected it. Whether human or natural, no one could say. What lingered most was not the artifact or the body, but the question it raised. If the Epic of Gilgamesh was born from truth, then where did the line between myth and history truly lie? Was the search for immortality that drove Gilgamesh, the yearning to outlast death, not also the story of humanity itself? In the end, the tomb of Gilgamesh became less a discovery than a mirror. For scientists, it reflected the boundaries of knowledge, how even the most advanced tools can reach only so far. For believers, it affirmed that ancient wisdom might still sleep beneath the soil, waiting for an age ready to understand it. Today, the sands of Uruk remain quiet. The wind moves softly over the mounds, whispering through the reeds of the old riverbed. The coordinates of the supposed chamber are known to only a few, guarded in silence. Whether a legend preserved or a secret concealed, the resting place of Gilgamesh continues to remind us of the oldest truth of all, that every civilization, no matter how great, must one day return to dust. Yet somewhere, beneath the earth, a king may still be dreaming,